I am pro-abortion. Dennis Prager is anti-choice.
Let's talk about one of the most emotionally charged subjects there is, abortion. The only question here is the moral one. Is ending the life of a human fetus moral?
I think Prager is kind of already setting the terms of this in the wrong way, because whether something is moral or not, I mean, in Prager's view, that's whether the Lord saith or not. But in my view, it's whether it's good for your life and overall well-being. The choice to abort or the choice to keep and carry to term, either of those could be moral, either of those could be immoral, depending on the specific woman's values and circumstances. It doesn't affect the issues of rights and legality. We have rights to do things that are immoral. But Prager wants to elide over that entire issue and just focus on whether it's moral or not, when the very real issue in this country is whether we're going to continue to have a legal right to have it at all.
Dennis Prager is trying to do is that, well, he's saying, well, to hell with the legal part. Let's just talk about the morality. And if we can somehow magically justify that it's immoral, therefore that leads us to the idea that it should be illegal. But no, there's things that we can do that's immoral to other people, but that doesn't mean it should be illegal. Lying to your mom is morally wrong, but that doesn't mean you should face legal persecution for that.
Does the human fetus have any value and any rights? Now, it's a scientific fact that a human fetus is human life. Those who argue that the human fetus has no rights say that a fetus is not a person.
Personally, I would make the distinction between alive and alive with a V. To me, like, yeah, like it's an organism that's alive, and it's of the human species. It has human DNA. I mean, that part is just basic science. But is it a human life? When we mean by life, I mean kind of experiencing life as a human being, right? That means, interacting with the world, being, sensing and touching and feeling things. Like, if somebody was in a coma and the doctor said, he's not going to make it out. Well, yeah, he's alive, but he's not having a life. His life is over.
There are many living beings that are not persons that have both value and rights.
So I don't think that non-human creatures have rights. I think that they can have value. I'll come back to that in a second. The kinds of rights that we have as human beings come from how we function and exist as rational animals. Well, what about a baby? A baby can't reason. No, but it's already autonomous living, and it's going to be a human, and it's past the threshold of having been born. When Prager started out in saying, does it have value? Value to whom? Value for what? That's a question that I don't think is going to get sort of answered here. We're going to get a kind of intrinsic view that, like, this has value, that has value, don't mistreat it, right? So it's not as if a non-human being just has intrinsic value. So that doesn't mean that they think those things have rights, or is Dennis Prager about to sign on for the idea of animal rights? I doubt it, but that might be where this argument goes. The question is not, does this fetus have value, therefore this is what you can and can't do to it? It's, this is what is, depending on what you plan to do with it, it does or doesn't have value.
Once Dennis makes it about morality, of course he's just going to avoid the whole entire concept of the political and legal concept of rights. He's just going to try to hammer home this idea of values. And of course he's going to have this religious aspect of values, and I think this comes from the idea that, well, the embryo will do, if left to its natural processes, it will do X, Y, and Z in the future, therefore somehow magically has value now. But if we take any regular instance of what does it mean for something to be of value to us, it is things that we're having a type of relationship with it currently. So an example, this conversation is of value to us because it's going to have some long-term goals and so on and so forth. Just like the pregnant lady, that the unborn entity inside of her is going to be of value because she needs to go through that process of pregnancy to have an actual child. And I think the second thing to really talk about is this concept of animal rights. Again, the reason why human beings have rights is because not only that, well, we understand what the concept of rights. We have bodily autonomy. We have volition. We can we can live in a peaceful society, or live in a society coexistively without initiating physical force against other people. Animals can't really do that. And some people argue is like, well, cows don't eat other animals. They don't fundamentally depend on initiating force against other people. It's like, but yeah, but if you put a cow on top of your lawn and you say sit and don't do anything, you think that cow is not going to eat up your lawn and chew up your house? Like, no, absolutely it is. So like the problem is like animals, it's two different things. It's either one, animals fundamentally depend on literally killing other animals, which undermines the whole entire concept of rights, which is making a society of organisms to peacefully coexist. That's the concept of rights. And then even if you could gather all the animals, that doesn't initiate physical force against one another. They don't understand the concept of rights to even apply it to their own lives and have it as an explicit moral code when they're dealing with other organisms. I mean, just imagine if, a lion just comes over there and chops the head off of a bunny. What are you going to do? Call the bunny police? Like, you're like, no, like animals don't have rights in that sense whatsoever.
A living being doesn't have to be a person in order to have intrinsic moral value and rights.
I don't think anything sort of has intrinsic moral value. I think objectively some things have moral value to an individual organism for its life. I'd be really interested, not really, I'd be a little interested to know what non-human things Dennis Prager thinks get rights.
I think he's going to appeal to the status quo and say, well, we have animal protection laws, therefore it has rights. But again, rights are a political principle that exists prior to law, and law is just the application of those political principles. You would have to validate the political principle of rights being applicable to animals before you can even suggest that the law is proper in protecting animal rights.
When challenged with this argument, people usually change the subject to the rights of the mother, meaning the right of a mother to end her fetus's life under any circumstance, for any reason, and at any time in her pregnancy. Is that moral?
I take it the argument is if the fetus has intrinsic worth, then it can't be the case that it's acceptable or moral for the mother to end the fetus's existence under any circumstances for any reason. And, not knowing what has intrinsic value, or even what that means, I'm not exactly sure why destroying something with intrinsic value is or isn't moral. But suppose that just being free to do what you want to do has more intrinsic value than the non-human person thing in question, then it would be moral to do. So for example, like that ant has some tiny amount of intrinsic value. And I guess by this logic, I shouldn't step on it for no damn good reason. Except what if I'm free to do certain things for no damn good reason because I'm a free citizen in a free country, and that includes, stepping on an ant. And that's actually more important than the intrinsic value of the ant. I don't know how you weigh and compare intrinsic values, but it's pretty clear that if different things can have them, and some can perhaps have more, in which case, sure, it could be moral.
And again, going back to the idea that abortion is inherently a political issue, and the fact that Dennis is being very silly and just talking about values here, it's making it seem like political officials are just sitting there running around, society and civilization pointing at people, you have value, you have value, you have value, instead of doing what they're supposed to do, which is recognizing, protecting, and enforcing individual rights.
But in most cases, nearly everyone believes that the human fetus has essentially infinite worth and an almost absolute right to live. When? When a pregnant woman wants to give birth. Then society and its laws regard the fetus as so valuable that if someone were to kill that fetus, that person could be prosecuted for homicide. Only if a pregnant woman doesn't want to give birth do many people regard the fetus as worthless. Now, does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Why? Because a child that a pregnant woman, or a fetus that a pregnant woman is bringing to term, is going to be a child, and a fetus that is aborted by a pregnant woman is going to be nothing. And nothing doesn't have value, and a human child to its parents and just human society does have value. None of this is intrinsic. All of it is contingent on what this woman and her partner or her family want to happen, whether they want there to be a child or not. Things have value for some organism for some reason. If bringing a fetus to term doesn't advance your life, your goals, it does not have value to you. And you are the only person it's relevant here that should have value for, since you will be the one who has to care for it if it comes into being. And it's you who have the responsibility, and with that responsibility, the freedom to choose to not have it if it's not going to meet your goals.
Yeah, another way to say is that values are contextual. So like, let's say if I was, building a rocket ship and somebody gave me a banana. I was like, here, take this banana. It's going to help you build your rocket ship. And I'm going to be sitting there like, this banana has absolutely no value in the purpose of me building this rocket ship. I mean, like, what am I going to use it for fuel? Now, if I'm hungry and somebody gives me a banana, like, absolutely, that banana has a lot of value now because it's something that banana can now fulfill. Values are contextual. When it comes to the mother's life, and we're talking about a value, not a value within itself, but it's something having a value in relationship to other people being the valuers. If the mother says, I want to become a parent, then yes, this unborn entity has value. If she says, no, I don't want to become a parent, then it has no value, right? It's not within itself, it's its relationship that it has with other people. It's kind of redundant and silly to sit there and suggest that values can exist independent of valuers. I mean, then if all organisms cease to exist, then what is a value then? Right? There's nobody that's sitting there that's determining something as a value.
Yeah. In a dead universe, nothing matters.
It's just things.
Yeah, it's just things. If it's a human person, then maybe it has a say. It should have some say in what I can do with it given what I value. If I wake up after a car crash and they've hooked up the world's greatest violin player to me and he has to depend on my body, right? He's a human man. He's got rights and all that. I still don't have to be his IV drip, that's not on me. I can call it off. Here's what he's doing. He's ignoring that. He's saying, forget human person, just have his intrinsic value. Now, again, I don't think a fetus is a human person with human rights, but I do think it can be a value.
I think another aspect to touch on is that by us suggesting that the value of the unborn entity is contextual based on the type of goals and purposes that people want to pursue, I don't think this is the primary and the end all be all argument as to why you should have an abortion. I think there's another aspect that we'll touch on in a minute. But another part is that values are irrelevant when it comes to other human beings in society, right? I mean, I could have an aunt that sit there and tortured me when I was 8, put, I don't know, cockroaches in my ear or something like that. Like, I wouldn't want to value my aunt, and nor should I. But that doesn't mean I have a right to kill her or anything. She still has rights. But the value aspect is absolutely irrelevant to the idea of whether or not you have rights. So you could.
I hope you can take her to court for the cockroach thing, but yeah, I see your point.
No, absolutely. But what I'm getting
at,
I
see your point.
Yeah, absolutely. But
either a human fetus has worth, or it doesn't. And this is moral argument number 2. On what moral grounds does the mother alone decide a fetus's worth?
I think the question answers itself on the grounds that she makes the choice to make it into a thing that can have worth or not.
I mean, obviously that it's the mother that's carrying the pregnancy, and therefore she should have the decision to, whether or not that she wants to carry it to term, or whether or not have an abortion. But we can put it this way too: the basis in which a woman should decide that is whether or not she believes that having the child or having an abortion is going to be the best decision for her to progress her own life and her own happiness.
We certainly don't do that with regard to a newborn child. It is society, not the mother or the father, that determines whether a newborn child has worth and a right to live.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna come clean. I was not expecting that. I presume he doesn't mean, and has only unintentionally implied, that if society decided a newborn didn't have worth, it could put that child to death. I think in that situation, no one would be more outraged and would try harder to save that child than its parents. I'm genuinely kind of perplexed by how he thinks rights or the value something has works. Is it intrinsic? Is it socially subjective? If it's socially subjective, what's the problem? That it should be all of society all of Christian society that's deciding whether you get to do this and not some individual liberal mother? I mean, like, what's the cutoff point here?
Me, I'm not so soft on being wary of what his intentions are. Like, I will take his words at face value because, PragerU is I would presume, a multi-million-dollar organizations, and they should be careful on what they're saying. So I will go as far as saying the whole entire idea of society determining who has rights. I mean, that's kind of going along what I said, a couple of minutes ago, right? The idea of society determining who has rights or who has values is just silly, right? No, nobody did. It's not who determines who has rights. It's what determines who has rights. And that objective basis for where rights come from is that if you want to live, then you have to think and act, take your own independent action for your own life to live, and those facts remain true in a societal context, right? And it's that if somebody initiates physical force against you, they can prevent you from living your own life. And this is what gives rise to the necessity of the political concept of rights. It's that you take your own actions to live your life, and people don't interfere with that. That's an objective basis. It's not people pointing fingers and deciding anything. It's that, hey, oh my God, if I want to live, if I want to achieve things and values, man, I would love to live in a society where nobody uses force against me. That would be great. And that's the argument generally the argument for individual rights. And that's based on the factual requirements of human existence.